There is a specific kind of loneliness that only exists inside a friendship. It lives in the space between what you say and what you mean. It breathes in the half-second before you laugh at his joke, in the particular way you memorize the sound of his footsteps coming down the hallway toward your door. It is the loneliness of being known completely by someone who does not know the most important thing about you. I lived in that space for 7 years. This is the story of how I finally came home. My name is Noah Calloway, and I have been in love with my best friend since I was 22 years old. His name is Jamie Park, and before I tell you what happened, I need you to understand who he is. Not who he is to me, though we will get there. Who he is as a person. Because this story only makes sense if you understand that Jamie Park is genuinely, specifically, almost unreasonably good. He is the kind of person who remembers what you ordered at a restaurant 3 years ago and quietly tells the waiter before you have to. He is the kind of person who shows up to help you move apartments without being asked, because he overheard you mention it on the phone and wrote it in his calendar. He sends voice messages instead of texts when he thinks something important needs the warmth of an actual voice. He keeps a list on his phone of his friends' favorite songs for the specific purpose of playing them at the right moment. He has never once, in 7 years, let me feel like I was too much. He is also objectively beautiful. Dark eyes that catch the light in ways that seem personally directed. A smile that arrives slowly, like something being offered rather than performed. Hands that are expressive when he talks, that move through the air like they are conducting something only he can hear. He is Korean American, raised in Portland, with his mother's quiet stubbornness and his father's laugh, which is enormous and completely infectious and arrives without warning. I know all of this because I have spent 7 years paying attention to him, with the focused, helpless attention of someone who cannot stop even when they know they should. We met in graduate school. Communications program, second week of September, a professor's overcrowded welcome party in a too-warm apartment where I knew approximately no one. I was standing near a bookshelf pretending to be deeply interested in a collection of film theory books when someone appeared beside me and said, without preamble, "You're not actually reading those. You're using them as cover because you don't know anyone here either." I turned. He was looking at the bookshelf too, a plastic cup of something in his hand, expression entirely pleasant and completely unapologetic. "Bold opening," I said. "I figure if I'm going to be awkward, I might as well be honest about it." He extended his free hand. "Jamie Park. I know one person at this party and she just left with someone she met 5 minutes ago, so I am now officially adrift." Noah Calloway, same situation, minus even the one person. He grinned, slowly like I said, like a door opening. "Well," he said, "now we both know someone." We talked for 4 hours that night. We closed down the party, then stood on the sidewalk outside for another 45 minutes because neither of us wanted to stop. I walked home in the September dark feeling the specific electric aliveness of having genuinely connected with someone, and I thought, I want to know that person for the rest of my life. I did not yet know that wanting would become complicated. The friendship built itself quickly and solidly, the way good things do when two people are both paying attention. We were in 3 of the same seminars. We started studying together out of convenience and kept doing it out of preference. By November, we had a standing Thursday dinner at a Thai place near campus that we never officially established, but both simply began showing up to. By January, we had each other's families in our phones. By spring, we were the kind of friends that other people assumed had known each other for years. What I remember most about that first year is the quality of ease. Jamie was the first person I had ever met with whom I did not have to perform being fine. I could be tired around him, uncertain, half-formed. I could change my mind mid-sentence, and he would follow the shift without making me explain it. I could fall into silence, and he would fall into it with me, comfortable, no pressure to fill it. I came out to him in April of our first year. We were sitting on the roof of his apartment building with bad wine in paper cups, watching a spectacularly mediocre sunset. And it came out of me the way things do when you are relaxed enough to stop guarding the door. "I'm gay," I said, conversationally, like I was mentioning the weather. He looked at me. "Okay," he said. "That's it. What were you expecting?" "I don't know," more words. He thought about it. "I'm glad you told me. I'm glad you felt like you could." He paused. "Does this change anything about anything?" "No," I said. "Then okay." He topped up my paper cup. "You want to talk about it or just let it sit?" "Let it sit, I think." "Done." And that was it. That was the whole conversation. No fanfare, no performance of acceptance, no making it about him or his feelings. Just, "Okay, I see you. What do you need?" He made it feel like being known instead of being examined, and I loved him for it with a fierceness that frightened me even then. I did not tell him, that night or for a very long time after, that the feeling frightening me was not just gratitude. I fell in love with him slowly and then all at once, the way Hemingway described going broke, and by the time I understood what was happening, it was already too late to step back from it. I remember the specific evening I stopped being able to pretend it was just friendship. We were in his apartment, second year of grad school, studying for comprehensive exams. It was past midnight. We had been working for 6 hours and we were both exhausted and slightly delirious in the way that extreme tiredness makes you. He had fallen asleep sitting up against the couch, his head tilting slowly sideways until it came to rest on my shoulder. I sat very still. His breathing evened out. His hair smelled like the cedar shampoo he had used since I had known him. His weight against my shoulder was warm and entirely natural, like something that had always been there. And I thought very clearly, with a clarity that was almost clinical in its precision, I am in love with this person. Then I cannot tell him. Then I will carry this quietly, and I will protect this friendship above everything else, because the friendship is real, and what I feel might not be returnable, and I refuse to cost us both what we have built. I made that decision at 12:43 a.m. on a Tuesday in November, and I kept it for 6 years. 6 years of being his best friend. 6 years of moving to Chicago together after graduation, because it made geographic sense, and because neither of us wanted to not be in the same city. 6 years of Sunday mornings at his kitchen table and Friday nights on his couch and shared playlists and inside jokes, and being the first call when something went wrong and the first call when something went right. 6 years of watching him date other people and being genuinely, carefully, exhaustingly happy for him every single time, because I loved him and his happiness mattered more than my discomfort, and also because none of those relationships lasted, and each ending quietly broke something in me that I quietly rebuilt. 6 years of being, by any external measure, his person, just not in the way I wanted to be. People assumed, sometimes. Colleagues would ask. New acquaintances at parties would look between us with a knowing expression. We laughed it off together, easily, the practiced deflection of two people who had a comfortable script for it. He never seemed to notice that my laugh was always a half-second behind his. Here is the other thing I need you to understand about Jamie Park. He was also carrying something. I did not know this then. I would not know it for another year. But looking back with the clarity that hindsight allows, I can see the signs that were always there, the small tells of a person holding something close that they do not yet know how to say. The way he sometimes looked at me when he thought I was not looking. Not the casual glance of a friend checking in, but something longer, more searching, pulled back quickly when I turned. The way he made space for me in his life that was different from the space he made for anyone else, not just in time and priority, but in quality, a particular attentiveness that his other friendships, warm as they were, did not have. The way, after every relationship he had ended, he would end up at my apartment, not his, and sleep on my couch. And in the morning say something like, "It just never felt right, you know," like something was always missing. I thought he was talking about the relationships. He was not only talking about the relationships, but that is getting ahead of things. Let me tell you first about the night everything changed. Let me tell you about the phone call. It was a Wednesday in March. 7th year since we had met, 6th year since I had made my decision on that midnight couch. I was at work, a mid-afternoon lull in an otherwise busy day, when my phone rang and I saw Jamie's name, and answered with the easy reflex of someone whose best friend's calls always get picked up immediately. "Hey," I said, "what's up?" There was a pause, just slightly too long. "Noah," his voice was different, not alarmed, not crying, but stripped somehow, like something had been removed from it. I sat up straighter. "Jamie, what happened?" "I'm at Northwestern Memorial." A breath. "I'm okay. I need you to know that first. I'm okay, but I need you to come." The next 4 minutes are a blur in my memory. I remember telling my colleague I had a family emergency. I remember my coat in my hands before I had consciously decided to pick it up. I remember the cab and the cold March air and the particular fluorescent quality of hospital light when you walk in from outside and your eyes have not adjusted. I remember the nurse telling me he was in room 214 and the walk down the corridor feeling approximately 17 miles long. I remember pushing open the door. He was sitting up in the hospital bed, not lying down, which for some reason was the first thing that allowed me to breathe. He was in a hospital gown with his own jacket draped over his shoulders because he ran cold and always had. He had a bandage on his left forearm and a bruise beginning to bloom along his cheekbone, and he looked, in the specific way that crisis strips people back to their essential selves, very young and very tired and more honest than I had seen him in years. He looked at me when I walked in. And then, without any warning, Jamie Park, who I had watched stay composed through his father's illness and his graduate thesis defense and 2 significant heartbreaks, started to cry. Not quietly, not politely, the real kind, the full-body kind, the kind that has been held back so long it arrives all at once without permission. I crossed the room in 3 steps and sat on the edge of his bed and put my arms around him and held on, and he pressed his face against my shoulder and shook. And I did not say a single word because there was nothing to say and everything to feel, and sometimes the only right response to someone's pain is to simply refuse to let them be alone in it. We stayed like that for a long time. When the shaking slowed and his breathing evened, he pulled back just far enough to look at me. His eyes were red. The bruise on his cheek was darkening. He looked wrecked and real, and I loved him so much it felt like a physical weight pressing against my sternum. "Car accident," he said quietly. "The other driver ran a red light. My car is totaled. I'm fine, just bruised and shaken. They want to keep me overnight for observation." "Okay," I said, "I'm staying." "Noah, you don't have to." "I'm staying, Jamie." He looked at me for a moment, then nodded, then looked down at his hands. "I've been thinking," he said, "sitting here for 3 hours about what actually matters." He paused. "About what I keep waiting to say." Something shifted in the room. I felt it, the specific change in atmospheric pressure that happens when a conversation is about to become something it has never been before. "Jamie," I said carefully. "Not yet," he said softly. "Not tonight. I'm not okay enough tonight." He looked up. "But soon. I need to tell you something soon." I nodded. My heart was doing something complicated and rhythmic and too loud. "Okay," I said, "soon." I pulled the chair from the corner of the room to the side of his bed, and I sat in it, and I stayed all night, and neither of us slept very much, and we watched bad television with the volume low, and occasionally our hands were close enough on the bed railing to almost touch, and I thought about what he had said about having something to tell me, and I did not let myself hope, because hopping had always felt like the most dangerous thing I was capable of. But something in the room that night was different. Something had shifted. And even I, cautious as I had trained myself to be, could feel it. There is a particular kind of morning that exists only after a night you survive together. The light is the same light it always is. The coffee tastes the same. But you are not quite the same people who went in, and you both know it. And the knowledge sits between you warm and unspoken, like something that has not yet decided what shape it wants to take. The hospital discharged Jamie at 11 the next morning. I had gone home at 7 to shower and change and come back, because he had told me firmly to go, and I had compromised by leaving only long enough to do the minimum necessary and return. I brought him a coffee from the place on Michigan Avenue that he liked, and a change of clothes from his apartment because I had a key and had for 4 years, and the particular blueberry muffin from the hospital cafeteria that he would deny enjoying but always ate completely. He was dressed and sitting on the edge of the bed when I came back, looking better in the way that a night of rest and the prospect of leaving a hospital always makes a person look better, though the bruise on his cheekbone had deepened to a complicated purple-green, and he was moving his left arm with the careful deliberateness of someone managing soreness. He looked up when I walked in. "You brought the muffin," he said. "I always bring the muffin. I don't even like the muffin. You always eat the entire muffin." He took it from the bag without further comment. I sat in the chair I had occupied most of the night and watched him eat and felt the particular tenderness of someone looking at a person they love in the unguarded moment of simply existing, not performing, not presenting, just being. He had a small scar at his hairline from a childhood bicycle incident he had told me about once. I knew the exact cadence of his chewing. I knew he would fold the muffin wrapper into a precise square when he finished, not because he was particularly tidy, but because his hands needed something to do when he was thinking. He folded the wrapper. "About what I said last night," he began. "You don't have to," I said immediately. "I know I don't have to." He looked at the folded wrapper in his hands. "That's not the same as not needing to." The room was quiet in that particular hospital way, muffled and slightly outside time. "There's something I've been carrying for a while," he said. "Something I've been telling myself I'd say when the moment was right. And then the moment would come and I would find a reason why it wasn't quite right yet, and I would wait for the next one." He paused. "I spent 3 hours in this room yesterday before I called you, and the thing I kept coming back to was, if something had actually happened to me, the thing I would have regretted most is not the unsaid professional things or the untraveled places." His voice was even, but his hands were not. "It would have been you." My heart was doing that complicated thing again. "Jamie." "Let me get there," he said quietly. "I've been trying to get there for a long time." I closed my mouth, nodded, waited. He looked up at me then, and his eyes in the morning hospital light were very dark and very direct, and there was nothing in them that I recognized as anything other than honesty. "I think I've been in love with you for a long time," he said, "and I think I've been afraid of it for just as long, and I think I've been waiting for some perfect moment that was never going to arrive on its own, and yesterday was." He stopped, swallowed. "Yesterday was the universe being extremely unsubtle about the fact that there is no perfect moment. There's just this one. And you." The silence that followed was the loudest I had ever heard. I would like to tell you that I responded with grace and eloquence, that I said something worthy of 7 years and 1 hospital room, and the specific courage it took him to say what he had just said. What actually happened was that I stared at him for approximately 5 seconds, and then I said, "How long?" Not a question, a demand, the kind that comes from somewhere below conscious thought. He blinked, sorry. "How long, Jamie? How long have you?" "4 years," he said. "Maybe longer, 4 years with certainty." 4 years. 4 years running parallel to my 6 in the specific way, that fate has a dark sense of humor about timing. "I have been in love with you," I said, and my voice came out strange and low, "for 6 years." The expression that crossed his face was something I do not have adequate words for. It was shock and recognition, and something that looked very much like grief for time, and also something that looked very much like relief, profound and physical. The relief of a person who has been holding their breath for 4 years, and has just been told they are allowed to stop. 6 years, he said. 6 years. Noah. He said my name like it was a question and an answer simultaneously. I know, I said, I know. We looked at each other across the small hospital room with all of it between us. All 7 years. All the Thursday dinners and Sunday mornings and Friday nights, and the careful distances, and the almost touches, and the half-second laughs, and every single moment of choosing the friendship over the truth. And the truth sitting there the whole time in both of us, patient and quiet, waiting. We are, said Jamie slowly, genuinely ridiculous. And then I laughed. The real kind, the surprised kind, the kind that comes from somewhere genuine and releases something that has been stored too long, and he laughed too. And for a moment we were just two people laughing in a hospital room at the spectacular absurdity of themselves, which was, honestly, the most us thing that could possibly have happened. When the laughter settled, the real conversation began. Because here is the thing about finally saying the true thing after 7 years. It does not resolve everything. It opens everything. And opening is not the same as resolving, and both things are necessary, and the opening is often harder than the carrying was. I need to understand something, I said, when we were in the cab on the way back to his apartment, his overnight bag between us, the city moving past the windows in the ordinary way cities do even when your life is reorganizing itself. Why didn't you ever say anything? He was quiet for a moment, looking out the window. Because you were the most important person in my life, he said finally. And I was terrified that if I said it and you didn't feel it, I would lose the thing I valued most, and that felt like an unacceptable risk. I made the same calculation, I said. I know. He glanced at me sideways. We're both apparently very good at protecting things by nearly destroying them. To be fair, I said, we didn't destroy anything. We lost 6 years. We didn't lose them, I thought about it. We lived them, just not as fully as we could have. I paused. And you were worth every year of it, even the hard ones. He looked at me then, fully in the back of that cab in the Chicago morning light, and something in his expression was so open and so undefended that it was almost difficult to hold eye contact, like looking at something too bright. Can I ask you something? He said. Anything. Were there times when you almost said it, when you came close? I thought about the roof with the bad wine and the sunset, the couch at midnight with his head on my shoulder, the night his last relationship ended and he sat in my kitchen at 2 in the morning, and I made tea because it was the only thing I could do with my hands that wasn't reaching for him. More times than I can count, I said honestly. He nodded slowly. Me too. He looked back out the window. That night after Daniel and I broke up, when I sat in your kitchen and you made tea. I stared at him, that specific night. I almost said it that night. I had the words ready. And then I thought, he's being kind to me out of friendship. Don't make it something it isn't. He paused. I made myself believe I was imagining it. I was trying so hard that night, I said quietly, to not reach across the kitchen table and take your hand. He closed his eyes for just a moment. We are, he said again, genuinely ridiculous. At his apartment, once he was settled on the couch with a blanket and the television on low and his arm elevated on a pillow the way the doctor had instructed, there was a longer silence, the comfortable kind, the kind we had always been good at. But underneath, it something was working itself out. Noah, he said eventually, I need to say something difficult. I waited. I meant everything I said this morning. I need you to know that with absolute certainty. He turned his head to look at me. And I also need us to be careful with this. Not because I doubt it, because I don't, because it means too much. Tell me what careful looks like to you. He thought about it. I don't want to rush from 7 years of friendship into something that replaces it. I want to build something that includes it. All of it. The Thursday dinners and the Sunday mornings and the comfortable silences. I don't want to lose who we are to each other in the process of becoming something more. Something settled in me, with a particular piece of being understood. That is exactly what I want, I said. Yeah. Jamie, you are my favorite person on earth. The last thing I want to do is lose the friendship inside whatever comes next. I paused. I want both things. I think we can have both things. He looked at me for a long moment. I think we can too, he said. I think it's actually easier for us than it is for most people because we already know each other. We already know everything, I agreed. Not everything, he said. Something shifted in his expression, softer, warmer, carrying the particular weight of someone finally allowing themselves to want what they have always wanted. There's more to learn. The room was warm and quiet, and the city moved outside the windows, and the television played something neither of us was watching, and I sat beside him on his couch, where I had sat hundreds of times before. But nothing was the same as it had been, and everything was better than it had been. And the future, which had always been something I looked toward with quiet, careful longing, suddenly looked like something I was allowed to walk toward. The week that followed was the strangest and most beautiful week of my adult life. We did not dramatically transform overnight. That was not who we were, and we both knew it. What changed was the quality of everything. The same Thursday dinner, but with the specific ease of people who no longer have anything hidden between them. The same Sunday morning at his kitchen table, but with a new vocabulary of small gestures. His hand covering mine briefly when he reached across for his coffee cup. The way he leaned into my shoulder when we were on the couch, unhurried and deliberate, making contact in the way that people do when they have decided to stop pretending that the contact is accidental. We talked more, deeper than we already talked, which had been deep. We filled in the gaps, the years of almost, the specific moments when we had nearly said the thing and hadn't. It was sometimes funny and sometimes aching, and always intimate in the way that true confession is intimate, the sharing of the interior rooms you have kept locked. Priya, my colleague who had known me for 4 years and who had suspected something for at least 3 of them, received a text from me on the Saturday of that week that read simply, "I told him." She called me in 11 seconds. "You what?" "He told me first, actually." The silence on her end was magnificent. "I need," she said finally, very carefully, "every single detail." Jamie's friend Soo Yeon, who had apparently been holding her own suspicions for years and had lost significant patience with both of us, received the news with the specific energy of someone who has been waiting for a resolution to a story they have been reading for too long. "Finally," she said when Jamie told her. "Oh my God, finally. Do you have any idea how many times I almost said something?" "Please tell me you never said something," said Jamie. "I have an extremely restrained character," said Soo Yeon. "It was very difficult." The external world received our news with the particular warmth that surrounds two people who have loved each other obviously enough that everyone around them already knew. Nobody was surprised. Everyone was relieved. And in the center of all of it, Jamie and I kept building. Slowly, steadily. The way we had always built things, with attention and patience and the specific confidence of two people who already knew that the foundation was real. I want to tell you about this carefully, because it matters. It was 10 days after the hospital. A Friday evening, his apartment, the version of our Friday nights that had existed for 6 years. Takeout from the Indian place on Damon. The playlist he had made years ago that we both still loved. The specific quality of his apartment in the evening, warm and low-lit and lived in, all his books and his plants and the photographs on the wall. One of which was a photo of the two of us from a trip to New York 4 years ago that he had framed and put up, and that I had stood in front of many times thinking things I did not allow myself to say. We were on the couch, his shoulder against mine, the comfortable silence. He turned his head to look at me. I turned mine to look at him. And there it was, that proximity that we had managed and maintained and carefully navigated for 6 years. But something was different now. The navigation was gone. There was nothing to manage. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi," I said. He reached up and very gently, with the back of 2 fingers, touched my cheek. Just that. Just the lightest possible contact. Just the specific tenderness of someone who has wanted to do something for a very long time and is now allowing themselves to do it carefully. I turned my face slightly into his hand. He kissed me. Soft and slow and entirely intentional. The kind of first kiss that understands it is the beginning of something very long and very serious, and treats it accordingly, with the reverence that anything true deserves. When we pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine. His eyes were closed, mine were too. 7 years, he said quietly. Worth it, I said. He made a small sound that was almost a laugh and almost something else. His hand was still against my cheek. Worth it, he agreed. Outside the window, Chicago was doing what Chicago does on a March evening, cold and bright and indifferent to individual human moments. Inside, on that couch, in that warm and low-lit room, everything was entirely different from how it had been before, and also exactly the same, and both of those things were true simultaneously, and neither canceled the other out. We stayed like that for a long time, forehead to forehead, breathing the same air, not rushing. We had learned, the both of us, in 7 years of almost, that the present moment is the only one we are ever actually given. We were finally completely in it. Love, the real kind, the sustainable kind, is not a feeling that arrives and then simply stays. It is something that you choose and choose again, and choose differently as you grow, and the choosing is the whole of it. The feeling is just what makes the choosing feel like grace instead of effort. I know this now. I learned it from a man with dark, expressive hands and a slow, arriving smile, in the specific classroom of a friendship that had always been more than either of us had words for. Spring came to Chicago the way it always does, reluctantly and then all at once, the gray March giving way to an April that could not quite decide between winter and something warmer, and then a May that arrived with genuine conviction, warm and green and smelling of rain on concrete, and the particular aliveness that the Midwest earns after months of cold. Jamie and I moved through the season together the way we had always moved through seasons, with the rhythm and ease of 2 people who know each other's patterns deeply. But now there was more. Always more. The quality of more that comes from having finally removed the thing that was always between you, the silence, the almost, the careful distances, and finding that what remains is everything. We were learning each other again, or rather, learning the new version of what we had always been. Because this is the thing about best friends who become more. They do not have to build trust or compatibility or understanding from nothing. They have to learn a new architecture for what already exists. And that is an entirely different kind of work, more nuanced and in some ways more demanding, because you cannot hide behind the performance of early romance. You are already known. The vulnerability is already there. There is nowhere to retreat to. It was occasionally terrifying. It was overwhelmingly extraordinary. I would be doing you a disservice if I told you that everything was effortless once we got there, that the confession and the first kiss resolved all tension, and we floated through the following months on a cloud of pure romantic ease. That is not how love works. It is not how Jamie and I work. The argument came in June. It was not about anything dramatic. The best arguments rarely are. It was about a decision I had made at work, a significant one, a potential opportunity in another city that I had been considering and researching, and crucially, had not mentioned to Jamie, until it was already at a fairly advanced stage of consideration. He found out the way people find out things in the modern world, through a mutual acquaintance who mentioned it casually, assuming he already knew. He came to my apartment that evening with the specific controlled stillness of someone managing something real. "Portland," he said when I opened the door. I knew immediately, "Jamie, you were considering a job in Portland for at least a month, and you didn't tell me." I let him in. We stood in my kitchen and I watched him work to keep his voice even, and I felt the specific guilt of someone who knows exactly what they did and why, and that the why does not fully excuse the what. "I didn't know if it was real yet," I said. "I didn't want to say something that might not happen." "That is not actually the reason," he said, not unkindly, just accurately. I was quiet. "The reason," he said, "is that you have spent 7 years making decisions about the two of us alone to protect me from information you thought might be hard for me. And that was a habit before we were together, and it has not fully gone away." The accuracy of it landed hard. "You're right," I said. "I know I'm right." He leaned against the counter and looked at me. "Noah, I need you to hear this. I am not the friendship you had to protect. I am not a thing that will break if you tell me a difficult truth. I am your person. You tell your person things, even the uncertain things, especially those." "I know," I said. "I know, and I think," I stopped, tried to say it cleanly. "I think I am still unlearning the patterns. 6 years of carrying things quietly is a long habit. I'm still learning what it looks like to not carry things alone." He was quiet for a moment. "Are you actually considering it?" he said. "Portland?" "No," I said honestly. "I looked at it seriously for about 3 weeks and decided it wasn't what I wanted, for a lot of reasons." I held his gaze. "You are one of the reasons. Not the only reason, because I don't think it's fair to either of us for you to be the only reason I make decisions, but a significant one." Something in his face shifted. "You could have told me that," he said. "That you were looking at something and decided it wasn't right, even just that." "I know I should have." He crossed the kitchen and stood in front of me and put both hands on my face in the way he had started doing, this specific gesture of his that I had learned meant, "I am here, I see you, I am not going anywhere." "We are both still learning this," he said. "That's okay. It's allowed to be something we're learning." "Are we okay?" I asked. "We are better than okay." He pressed his forehead to mine. "We are two people who just had their first real argument and handled it like actual adults. That is something to be proud of." I laughed quietly against the warmth of him. "I'll tell you things," I said, "the uncertain ones too." "And I'll tell you things," he said. "Deal." "Deal." He kissed me then, brief and sure, the kind of kiss that is punctuation rather than conversation. A period. The end of one thing and the clean beginning of the next. There was something else. Something he told me in July, on a warm evening on my rooftop with good wine in real glasses this time, the city below us electric and alive. He had known he was gay since he was 19, had come out to his family slowly over years, his mother first, then his father, then his sister. His mother had received it with the particular quiet grace of someone who had already, in some private interior space, known and decided it did not change anything important. His father had needed more time, not cruelty. Just time, the slow recalibration of a man who loved his son, and had to adjust the picture of what his son's life would look like. "He's good now," Jamie said. "Has been for years, but there was a period," he paused. "There was a period where I felt like being who I was might cost me the things that mattered, and I think that shaped the way I learned to hold things quietly, to not say the full truth until I was certain it was safe." "And with me?" I asked. "Why did it take so long to feel safe with me?" He thought about it with the seriousness it deserved. "It wasn't about safe exactly," he said. "I knew you were safe. I knew you since your first month of grad school." He turned his wine glass slowly in his hands. It was about loss, specifically the terror of losing the best thing in my life by asking it to be more than it was. I had lost enough things to being fully myself. I wasn't willing to risk losing you. Jamie, I said his name simply, with all of it behind it. I know, he said. I know it sounds like I didn't trust you. It sounds like you were protecting yourself, I said, and that you learned to do it young, and that it's something we have in common. He looked at me. Two people, he said slowly, who both learned to hold the most important things quietly, out of the same fear, for the same number of years, and then ended up in the same friendship. And eventually, I said, in the same truth. Eventually in the same truth. He held up his glass, to extremely inefficient emotional processing. I clinked mine against it, and to getting there anyway. We drank. The city glittered below us. The evening was warm and long and unhurried, the way summer evenings in Chicago can be when they decide to be generous. I want to say something, Jamie said after a while. Say it. I think this is the happiest I have ever been. He said it simply, without performance. Not the loudest, not the most exciting, the happiest. There's a difference. I knew the difference. I had been searching for it my entire adult life without fully knowing that was what I was doing. Me too, I said. I want to tell you about a Sunday morning in March, 1 year after the hospital, 1 year after everything changed. We were at his kitchen table that I had sat at so many times before and now sat at differently, with the ease of someone who has learned that they are allowed to be somewhere fully, without bracing for the day it ends. He was reading. I was writing. We had coffee and the particular domestic quiet of two people who have learned each other's rhythms so completely that silence is not empty but full, furnished with all the familiar things. His plant on the windowsill, the large leafy one he had nearly killed twice and revived with unreasonable dedication. The photographs on the wall, one of which was now a new one, from a weekend in October when we had driven up to Door County and stayed in a small cabin and hiked in the autumn cold, and come back with cheeks flushed, and a photograph that Soo-Yeon had taken of us on a dock, laughing at something neither of us could afterward remember, the lake gray and silver behind us, both of us entirely and visibly happy. He looked up from his book, found me already looking at him. What? He said, the way he said it without defensiveness, just curious. Nothing, I said, just looking. He smiled slowly, like a door opening. Look all you want, he said. You've earned it, 7 years of not looking. 7 years of looking, I corrected, just not letting you catch me. He laughed, set his book down, reached across the table and covered my hand with his. Outside, Chicago was doing its March thing, uncertain and edging toward spring, the particular quality of late winter light that promises something without fully delivering yet. Inside the kitchen, everything was warm and real and specific. The coffee and the plant and the photographs, and the man across the table who knew every version of me and had chosen all of them. I was thinking, he said, about the apartment on Paulina Street, the one we looked at last week. My heart did something quick and hopeful. You said it was too far from the blue line, I said carefully. It's 2 blocks from the blue line. I was being difficult. He was looking at me with the directness he had always had, the quality of honesty that had made me fall for him in the first place. I think I was scared. Of moving in together. Of wanting it too much. He turned my hand over and held it properly, fingers interlaced. I have a habit, as you know, of talking myself out of the things I want most because wanting them feels dangerous. I know the habit, I said. I have the same one. So I was thinking, he said, that maybe we could be scared about it together instead of me being scared about it alone. I looked at him across the kitchen table. This man I had known for 7 years and loved for 6 and been entirely free to love for 1. and the future, which I had always approached with careful measured steps, suddenly looked like something I wanted to run toward. Yes, I said simply. Yeah. Jamie, yes, obviously yes. He squeezed my hand. His smile arrived the way it always did, slowly, fully, like something that had been waiting to be allowed. Okay, he said, good. Good, I agreed. We sat like that for a while, hands linked across the table, coffee going slightly cold, Sunday morning light moving slowly across the floor of his kitchen. The last Sunday morning it would be only his kitchen. The beginning of the next thing, the one we were building together on the foundation of everything that had come before. Love is not, I have learned, the dramatic arrival. It is not the confession in the hospital room or the first kiss on the couch or the argument in the kitchen that you survive and become stronger for surviving. Those are the waypoints, the markers along a road that goes much longer than any single moment. Love is the Sunday morning, the hand across the table, the plant on the windowsill that almost died twice, the photograph on the wall of two people laughing on a dock, the slow accumulated weight of choosing the same person, again and again and again, in all the ordinary moments that make up an actual life. I chose Jamie Park for 7 years before I told him. I will choose him for the rest of them with the fullness of someone who has learned that the choosing, done openly and without fear, is the whole and entire point. He is my best friend. He is the great love of my life. He is, at this exact moment, stealing the last of my coffee with complete serenity, and I am watching him do it and feeling, in the specific and irreplaceable way that real happiness feels, entirely, perfectly, undeniably home.